sit and write along, taking some notes and then I write the songs. I'm staring down the road, my life is gone. Is this where I belong? Is it wrong to not believe in right and wrong? My mental state upon while asking you for some answers, but we don't have that type of bond. That my desire's gone. With the way that I've been living lately, if I died right now, you turn the fire on. Sick of this vanity so strongly, then I fell out. Now I'm avoiding questions like a scared dog with his tail down. Feeling so damn humiliated cause they looking at me like I'm hellbound. What story should I tell now? I'll just expose the truth. I'm so close, you never show the proof. And I'm on, what am I supposed to do? There's way too many different religions with vivid descriptions. Beg women to listen. I can't even beat my out getting convicted. These ain't wicked decisions. I got different intentions. I've been itching to get it. I've been given assistance dealing with this backlash because Marcus isn't a Christian. And I've been told that my sinful life is an addiction. But I can't buy it. It's just too hard to stand beside it. I need an answer, humans can't provide it. I look at the earth, the sun, and I can tell a genius man designed it. It's truly mind-blowing, I can't deny it. Is heaven real? Is it fake? Is it really how I fantasize it? Where's the Holy Ghost at? How long does it take a man to find it? My mind's a non-stop tape playing and I can't rewind it. You gave me the Bible and expect me not to analyze it? I'm frustrated and you provoked it. I'm not reading and wrote it. I have a know it. You gave it to me to think to avoid every useless moment. It was a mission that I had to abort, cause humans be lying with such an inaccurate source. It's gonna be hard to put me back on the course. Next Jehovah's Witness to come on my porch, I swear I'm slamming the door. A lot of folks believe it though, but I'm not surprised. Humans are thinking that Pac's alive. I ain't trying to take your legacy and torture down. I'm just saying, I ain't heard it from the horse's mouth. Just sheep always telling stories of older guys who were notarized by you and you finally vocalized. Now I'm supposed to bow my head and close my eyes and somehow let the Holy Ghost arise. Sound to guys, show yourself and the boom is done. Every rumor's gone, I no longer you're the one. I'll admit that my sinful ways were stupid fun, and all my old habits can hop on top of a roof to plunge. I donate to a charity cause I'd hang with a group of nuns, and everyone I ran into would know what I came to do. I wouldn't take a step unless it was in the name of you. I hate the fact that I have to believe you haven't been chatting with me like you did Adam and Eve, and I travel from trees with an apple to eat. That never happens to me. I don't know if you do or don't exist. It's driving me crazy. Send your condolences. This is me reaching to you, so don't forget if hell is truly a pit of fire and I get thrown in it, I'ma probably regret the fact that I ever wrote this shit. My gut feeling says it's all fake. I hate to say it, but I lost faith. This isn't a small phase. My perspective's all changed. My thoughts just keep. And in my mind, I make perfect sense. If you aren't real, then all my prayers aren't worth a cent. That will mean that I can just make up what my purpose is, and I can sit and this was a facade. And that will mean the government. Like they've been brainwashing us with a lot, so much that we don't even notice that we're stuck in the box. Man, everything is what if. Why is it always what if? Planet Earth, what if? The universe, what if? My sacrifice, what if? My afterlife, what if? Everything done! This is my I'm having fun! If you really care for me, prove that I need to live carefully. But I'll be damned if I put my own pleasure aside for an afterlife that isn't even guaranteed. We are you, and you're us. Stop playing games. My life's all I got, and heaven is all in my brain. And when I feel I'm in hell, my ideas are what get me through pain. Do as you please, and I just do me. I'm a human, I'll stay in my lane. Ill mind.
It's us, mind, power.
You are listening to Hopsin. This is the Neoliberal Round podcast. Right here on a Saturday afternoon. I am Ronaldo Mackenzie, and welcome to another episode of the Neoliberal Round podcast. And you can hear the frustration. You can hear the ambivalence. You can hear the tension and the pursuit for knowledge from Hopsin. That's Hopsin, actually. And I thought that I would have had to begin the episode with Hopsin singing that today. And, you know, that particular song is one of the reasons why I am doing this podcast series and doing this book project on privilege, power, position, status, and secrets to unlocking divine intervention. Because we're looking at power and its strategy. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to the Neoliberal Round podcast. And today, the topic is privilege, power, position, and the need for critical thinking. Again, privilege, power, position, and the need for critical thinking. The Ill Mind of Hopsin 7 by Hopsin is where we began this second part of a series on privilege, power, position, status, and secrets to unlocking divine intervention. The Ill Mind of Hopsin 7. He says, it's us, find power. It's us, find power. Live life, mind power. It's us, find power. Live life, mind power. Yo, expletive anybody. I might alarm. Life is a tour. I sit and ride along, taking some notes, and then I write the song. I'm staring down the road. My life has gone. Is this where I belong? Is it where? Is it wrong to not believe in right and wrong? My mental state is effing me up, and I cry the pond while asking you for some answers. But we don't have that type of bond. That my desires gone with the way that I've been living lately. If I died right now, you turn the fire on. Sick of this bull expletive. Niggas call me a sellout, cause I hoped or hopped on Christianity so strongly, then I fell out. Now I'm avoiding questions like a sacred or scared dog with his tail down, feeling so damn humiliated because they looking at me like I'm hellbound. What story should I tell now? I just exposed the truth. I'm so close to the effing edge. I should be close to you. But who the F are you? You never showed the proof, and I'm only effing human, yo. What am I supposed to do? There is way too many different religions with vivid descriptions, begging all effing men and women to listen. I can't even beat my expletive without getting convicted. These ain't wicked decisions. I got different intentions. I've been itching to get it. I've been given assistance. But the whole effing system is twisted. Now I'm dealing with this backlash because Marcus isn't a Christian? And I've been told that my sinful life is an addiction? But I can't buy it. It's just too hard to stand beside it. I need an answer, and humans can't provide it. I look at the earth and sun, and I can't tell a genius man designed it. It's truly mind-blowing. I can't deny it. Is heaven real? Is it fake? Is it really how I fantasize it? Where's the Holy Ghost at? How long it take man to find it? My mind's a non-stop tape playing and I can't rewind it. You gave me a Bible and expect me not to analyze it. I'm frustrated and you provoked it. I'm not reading that mother effing book because a human wrote it. I have a effing brain. You should know it. You gave it to me to think, to avoid every useless moment. That was Hopsin 7, the song Hopsin 7, the rap song Hopsin 7 by Hopsin. What an amazing song. What poet. This is poetry at its best. And I'm telling you, you don't have to read Shakespeare, guys. You can pull up on one of these rappers and open up the amazing lyrics. And I'm telling you, what? And these are seven, and I can relate to what he's going through. I have been there. Hopsin rap suggests that he's at a place where he is experiencing critical thinking at work. You see, that's what happens when you begin to expose oneself and think critically. It clashes with beliefs that you had once held because those beliefs came to you as a top-down approach with no ability to question them for yourselves, which locks your brain in a particular reality. Until you are able to break free from that, When you are able to, it challenges you to a point of distress and frustration, like what we hear from Hopsin. But that is good. It is good because it means now you are open to tremendous possibilities and the understanding of all things beyond any particular perspectives that were borrowed at best and had monopolized the mind so as to make it complicit and a willing participant in external abuse. That is what we must guard against, which is why we should develop the individual so that he or she can think for him or herself without the possibility of being hijacked. So as we think about privilege, power, position, and status within the development of human society over time, and the challenges they pose for progress, critical thinking and communication become absolutely necessary because knowledge or the ability to think critically while having access to information that is decentralized and demonopolized are key to augmenting the individual so as to avert external manipulation and discrimination. The lecture that I did on critical thinking at the Jamaica Theological Seminary for the course Caribbean Thought some time ago is worth sharing as we explore the issue of privilege and power, position and status, and this drive to want to regulate information and to create laws about teaching critical history and certainly as we think about how to protect against disinformation and manipulative power while we realize effective communication, which is to make popular what was the monopoly, critical thinking becomes paramount. When others seek to create laws and policies or regulatory methods or doctrines which would suggest that people can't think for themselves, I am about facilitating learning geared towards augmenting thinking that do the critical thinking that is needed to filter news, narratives, and perspectives. More laws and regulations do not necessarily change anything. They, more than anything, centralize ownership and limit access, which then create or expand an underground market that people can still access. Or if not an underground market, it creates a monopoly of the few where a few have access over the many. As we think about science, as we think about religion, as we think about all things, and how our brains have been hijacked by doctrines and rules and regulations that makes us complicit to abuse, the issue of critical thinking becomes important as we study power and privilege and position and status and secrets to unlocking divine intervention. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to the Neoliberal Round podcast. We ended by saying that more laws and regulations do not necessarily change anything. They more than anything centralize ownership and limit access, which then create or expand an underground market that people can still access, while at the same time those who are the power brokers in society manipulate the news that is slanted to a particular perspective and ideology based on whatever mainstream media is projecting or carrying that news. Almost every single news media is part of this misrepresentation of truth. When you slant truth in a limited way, and individuals in societies are part of that, they are complicit because they also we lock ourselves to a particular mainstream media depending on our political persuasion. So when you have people such as MSNBC and Fox and CNN telling us that they are about projecting the truth and reporting the truth, please remember that they are backed by certain sponsors who expect a particular kind of pragmatic truth. And those who feed themselves on the news, more often than not, especially those who are political, they only access one kind of news based on their political lens, which also does a disservice to information, to communication and truth. Because it allows others to lock you in a particular idea of truth or perspective. So when I see Obama and many other persons going around saying that they are regulating or trying to protect information or protect against disinformation, please remember that there are mainstream media that is part of the disinformation or misrepresenting perspectives and only project a particular perspective. So CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, CBS, all these Washington Journal, mainstream media is also part of the problem. If you're thinking about protecting against disinformation and regulating alternative news, the issue is not alternative news only. The issue is with communication in general and with news in general. Now, recently, former President Barack Obama said, "The way I'm going to evaluate any proposal touching on social media and the internet is whether it strengthens or weakens the prospects for healthy, inclusive democracy." He went on to say that as part of this, tech platforms need to recognize that they play a unique role in how people consume information, and their decisions have an impact on every aspect of society. And I'm going to push back on Mr. Obama here. When he says tech platforms and mainstream media companies such as CNN, MSNBC, Fox, and all the other mainstream news, they have a responsibility as well. They have a responsibility as well to recognize that they play a unique role in how people consume information, and their decisions have an impact on every aspect of society. So we will not single out one over another. In fact, each of us, he went on to say that Mr. Obama says each of us has to pick a side and he says, do we allow our democracy to wither when we pick a side, or do we choose to make it better? That's the choice we face, and it is a choice worth embracing. Solving the disinformation problem won't cure all that ails our democracies or tears at the fabric of our world, but it can help rebuild the trust and solidarity needed to make democracy stronger. It's up to each of us to decide what we value and to use the tools we've been given to advance those values. I believe, he continues, Mr. Obama continues, saying, I believe we should use every tool at our disposal to secure our greatest gift. And what is that? A government of by and for the people, for generations to come. With that power comes accountability and the need for some democratic oversight. Barack Obama. Now, several persons responded to Mr. Obama via his Twitter, and I will lift up a few of their posts here. Let's begin with one gentleman by the name of Average C, who says, and I quote, "I think you're viewing this the wrong way, President Barack Obama. Decentralization has been the theme of the 21st century. Decentralized news is just the next opportunity. It empowers our democracy by ensuring the 1% can't own us by buying out a few news channels." This guy is right, and he hit the nail on the head. I'm going to repeat it again. I think you're viewing this wrong, Mr. President. Decentralization has been the theme of the 21st century, and he is right. And that's what social media has done. Decentralized news, and that is a problem for the 1%. Average C continues by saying, decentralized news is just the next opportunity. It empowers our democracy by ensuring the 1% can't own us by buying out a few news channels. And that is true. That is a major issue in our country, and that is why we have alternative news and social media news. As an alternative to those persons, the 1%, who control the narratives because they control the news, the major news. I responded by saying, okay, I responded to Mr. Obama by saying, okay, let's talk about it. I've written an article and did a podcast show on this issue and cited you. I'd love to explore the issue with you, because how can we reconcile the issue of free speech and monopoly of the news or media and media responsibility, not just singling out one or two? I continued by saying, what does that mean? What does that mean? Because Mr. Obama said that the way I'm going to evaluate any proposal touching on social media and the internet is whether it strengthens or weakens the prospect for healthy, inclusive democracy. So my question to Mr. Obama was, what does that mean? We've heard great intentions to regulate when it does the opposite of the intentions. How do we guard against that? And what of people's own responsibilities? Your attempts to regulate assumes people can't think for themselves and can't filter news for themselves. Another person joined the conversation saying, and this person who goes by the name of Sydney E. says, and I quote, a solid working assumption. A solid working assumption. Responding to Obama. A solid working assumption. A solid working, again, what is it? A solid what? It's a working assumption. He goes on to say, Sydney E., if people could think and filter news for themselves, QAnon and support for a coup built on one man's lies won't exist. So he's here responding to me as well. Because I said that we've heard great intentions to regulate when it does the opposite of the intentions. How do we guard against that? And what of people's own responsibilities? It assumes people can't think for themselves. And he's saying that a solid working assumption. Sydney E. responding to me here. He says, if people could think and filter news for themselves, QAnon and support for a coup built on one man's lies wouldn't exist. There are no pedo pizza parlors, so case closed. There must be a fact check. A fact check step built into the system. Lies are too easy. Please remember that we already have mainstream media that's supposed to be great, that's supposed to be fact checkers of news, but yet still we see a slanted news projected by these mainstream media. Yet he's responding, telling me that if people could think and filter news for themselves, QAnon and support for a coup built on one man's lies wouldn't exist. That is not true. Because the people who are part of QAnon was also listening to mainstream media and other outlets. People make decisions for themselves. And I went on to respond to this particular nonsense by saying, but who determines this? Who determines it when perspectives are pragmatic at best? We don't need to build another system or institution based on financial backing to fact check. Fact checking can also be sabotaged. Who fact checks the fact checkers? What are their positions on all things? People like QAnon are driven by that messaging because they've locked themselves into that messaging. They've locked themselves into that messaging. and follow news that speaks to their ideological basis. I went on to say that people choose to believe the truth or the lies. People choose to believe the truth or the lies. And we are responsible for our own actions. We do not need another policy to regulate our actions or to take away personal responsibility. Sydney E. responded by saying, from your info, it looks like you've thought about this before, so I'm curious. What is your solution to weaponize this information? Ignore it? Pretend it doesn't exist? Tell people to be responsible? If you recognize it as a problem, what is your solution? Serious question. And I responded to Mr. Sydney, and this was the answer. I said, teach people critical thinking skills. Teach people to think for themselves. Yes, that is the solution. Because he said in the end, Mr. Sydney, from your information, it looks like you've thought about this before. So I'm curious, what is your solution to weaponize this information? Ignore it? Pretend it doesn't exist? And he says, tell people to be responsible? Yes. Tell people to be responsible. Tell people to think for themselves. Teach people critical thinking skills. Because, just so you know, irrespective of whatever regulation you pose, if people are locked in a particular way or slanted a particular way, they are going to do the research and find the information that speaks to their slant. And while we are against the regulation of information and news and so on, it's because of the special interests that are usually involved in mainstream media and in regulating. Therefore, facilitating critical thinking is necessary. And what is critical thinking, you may ask? It is thinking about thinking and what was previously or is the current thought that build on or debunk information that leads to new discoveries or thought and positions that improves life. Critical thinking is deliberate and intentional. It is deliberately and intentionally reflecting on truths, challenging oneself, whether through introspective discourse or engagements with others. Critical thinkers aren't born for critical thinking is a skill and vocation that is developed over time. Again, let me repeat that. Critical thinkers aren't born for critical thinking. For critical thinking is a skill and vocation that is developed over time. To do critical thinking is to do analysis. It is looking at things in a metaphysical way. It dissects and does surgery. It is a way of thinking that looks at patterns in action and explore thoughts. It examines and evaluates what is the obvious and what is not. It does not take sides. It involves having trained ears and eyes that hear and see far and wide. Critical thinking is developed through the training of the mind to think in a certain way, as it is explorative thinking. It challenges your own thinking and beliefs. It uses logic, common sense, and reason. It benefits from expansive thoughts and sequencing of present and past knowledge. It builds on past information. Critical thinking is coherent and clear. It follows the laws of logic and reason. It is fair and open. It is sharp and cuts. It goes deeper and deeper, but is focused and direct. Critical thinking may seem to hurt one's brain, but such thinking is left to those who are devoted to such discourse and vocation, as they are philosopher kings and queens working to play their part and make their mark towards revolutionary improvements on the totality of life. Take, for example, if you were to read my blog, many of the matters discussed are really explorative and challenges all sides. And what is the current thinking? It is a journal of critical thinking that is in the roughest of drafts at best, but has provided many opportunities to rethink old thoughts as I engage with these posted thoughts on social media. However, and as we continue with this line of argument, this need to create rule of thumbs, doctrines and regulations are a strategy, or is a strategy or ideal loophole for power. Because as we have argued, that this idea of power, privilege and status usually evolves to take on more sophistication over time, especially when you revisit philosophers, theologians such as St. Augustine. And I reference this early church, and I reference this early church father particularly to point out that his confessions, whose writings were incorporated within the Christian doctrine over any other, as it provides a convincing and reasonable basis to transform and develop Christianity into a huge hegemonic institution or capitalist franchise under the guise of piety. Moreover, as we think about this natural development of privilege and power from the formative years within intellectualism and up to the medieval eras and beyond, politicians or noblemen, leaders of a society who created or sensationalized tales about the sacred and profane, contained within Homer's Iliad, Hesiod's Theogony, Plato's Republic, or Socrates within the Phaedo, the Bible, Quran, and so on, continue to develop the theme of privilege, position, and status as it takes form from Homer to Plato, Aristotle to Aquinas, and Augustine, when we attempt to study the foundations and evolution of human society. When we delve into Plato's Phaedo and his other projects, it would seem as if Plato could not escape this human condition, this nature described by Kant, and this special interest, intellectualism, eschewed and debunked by Gramsci. Unlike all the previous Greek poets and the putative historians before, Plato downplayed hearsay and was more methodical, utilizing reason and his brand of logic to tell and arrive at Greek truth. Herodotus and Thucydides had already begun to challenge the truth of myth of the Greeks contained in Homeric literature and the Hesiod poems as nothing but fake news that justified Greek chauvinism and wars couched in ethnocentrism about Persians and the other peoples. Plato may have been inspired by this. His love for Socrates and the mountain of new literature that challenged traditional Greek thought exposed in Homer and Hesiod, so that he approaches all things through philosophia or philosophia, this search for the truth. Just as though we have in the 21st century, we have Hopsin searching for truth as we delve into his rap. It is this search for truth, since it has been lost in myth, Greek myths highlighted by Herodotus and Thucydides and Sappho Pindar, and the difference in their themes of war, heroism, love, and strife, that serves as a basis for this new Socratic Platonic interest of the day, where reality is never before split in two between the soul, the immaterial, and the body, which is the material. Because as you study in the reading of Phaedo, in the reading of Plato in the Phaedo, unadulterated knowledge or truth is attained by the philosopher who is overtaken by philosophy by rejecting the pleasure of life and devoting self to learning. It can be concluded from reading Phaedo that previous Greek poets' accounts would have been tainted by the body, for they had not attained, as we said earlier, philosophy or philosophia to write properly, so that they can write properly about anything. So we must assume that Homer and other Greek literature had errors, that the Socratic Platonic era is here attempting to put Greek ideas and literature in their proper perspective as a response to the challenges from Herodotus, Thucydides, and the influence of Euripides and others. So I am likening Hopsin to a kind of iconoclast as well. here is a young man who had accepted the Christian doctrine, and it seemed as if he was a Christian baptized, but then he turned his back on that because he is challenged by his ideas about all things and what he is getting from reading the scriptures. But then you are taught not to think, and you are conditioned to think that way, which is a challenge for individuality, a challenge for freedom, but it is also an opportunity for the power brokers. In fact, Socrates is considered to be an iconoclast, breaking the tradition that imagines the Greek hero as our Achilles, to promoting the philosopher as king and as hero. Euripides, Socrates' contemporary, and the other iconoclasts had begun writing plays that suggested that the gods were mere humans who, like Dionysius, had to die to attain a seat at Olympus. It is therefore not inaccurate to assume that this idea found way into Socrates' and Plato's philosophy of reason in their dialogues about reality. Moreover, this new assumption about a dualistic reality may not have been a universal concept during the middle period in which Socrates lived, and Eurycrates, pressing for credible witnesses to corroborate Plato's story, a form of evidentiary logic by multiple eyewitnesses, was a new way of writing and arriving at truth. Thus, this was a departure from the hearsay contained in previous Greek literature about events. Further, this mind and body dualism of all things was almost identical to the Apollo-Dionysius dichotomy in Greek tradition prior to this and up to that point and beyond. So we may assume that Socrates and Plato are taking a Greek story to improve upon it, because within the basis of their argument, they have recovered what was lost and are more aware of things. And it is in reason, based in philosophical dialogue, that this is achieved as part of the philosopher's preparation. The Iliad is said to be an epic, composed probably in the late 8th or early 7th century BC by Homer, whose life and or reality is still a mystery. Written with some type of Greek identity, the Iliad utilizes lines of hexameter for entertainment or imagination. All we have is a tradition, what the Greeks of historical times believed they know about Homer. There are those who question whether Homer was even Greek, such as Joseph, Ben, Matthias, who asserted that he was Jew because the Greeks did not learn to write until very late in their history. And the Trojan War was ignorant of present-day mode of writing, for Homer's songs were transmitted by memory and not unified until much later. Moreover, Hesiod's theogony is also met with scrutiny. In Hesiod's case, we also have to concern ourselves with the question of influence from the civilizations of the Near East, which had older, elaborate creation myths of their own. And although the theogony is our earliest surviving account of the origins of the gods from the Greek world, it must always be remembered that there were other contemporary accounts, but it is not possible to say that it represents what the Greeks believed or even what the Greeks of Hesiod's time believed. Further, there are those who would admit that earlier Greeks were concerned with future Greek actions so that their stories were aimed at creating a legendary Greece. For the Iliad had a different name in German traditions, which called the Earlias. and appeared earlier than Homer's Iliad. In fact, it is said that earlier Greeks did not put much credence into the stories of Homer and Hesiod until later, thereby underscoring Kant's assertion that history is for the future and its philosophy and methods are purely based in human nature and circumstance, thereby resulting into what we have today. One Greek history that parallels the Germans, which is different due to nature and circumstance, which I propose is that drive to promote a particular identity for a people. In fact, in the Sappho-Pindar fragments in 630 to 580 BCE, we are told, some say a host of cavalry, others of infantry, still others of ships are the most beautiful thing on the black earth. But I say, it is whomsoever one loves. By implication, this may be seen to suggest that to write about love is more worthwhile than to write about war. Essentially, in Sappho-Pindar, we see the early beginnings of this Kantian observation that human history is based on human nature and circumstance, that we have made into doctrines, which is now confusing people like myself and Hopsin until we arrive at critical thinking. This leads me to hypothesize that in times past, men such as Homer, Hesiod, and the early Greek men in one epoch or time period valorized war and wrote glowingly of war. But then the matter of theme turns from war to love. Homer's Iliad is one of war. The New Testament Bible speaks of the hero of love, where Christ willingly, heroically dies to save those whom he loves against Achilles in the Iliad, who heroically dies fighting. Nature and human circumstances in various periods turn poems and tales from war to love, depending on what the goal is for humanity in a particular period in time, based on their position and place in society and life. In fact, it is said that the ancient poet plays with his cards on the table. The modern dramatist conceals his hand. But he does it in such a way that the imagination is quickened to create for itself. In effect, the tales of Homer and Hesiod, and the few that is known or written or discovered, are already known by an inner circle of Greek scholars. The reader was always one of the inner circle, so that Homer artistically and poetically imposed an epic upon the known so as to produce his Iliad and Hesiod's Theogony. Which leads me to assert that such works are their imaginative work on a monotonous story. A story that is reimagined and reinterpreted with their epic, and later men have themselves reimagined and reinterpreted to produce what we have today as Greek myths. But what was life like then that it needed epics? I do not pretend to be a Greek scholar, as I do not profess to be part of any inner circle, as I am limited by time and space, and can only rely on assumptions about the past driven by facts that aren't themselves unique to a particular time. But as I seek to understand power in its shape and form, and neoliberalism as a representation of that in my dissertation, I have come to find tremendous value and interest in exploring the foundations of Greek exceptionalism and its connections with power, privilege, and position in society, and how these take shape throughout various epochs and periods in human history to the present. It then leads me to ask, is history and its products, poems, art, artifacts, traditions, and archives a true representation of the past given limitations of time, space, and geography, and human nature to privilege, possess, and to continue to to privilege a particular position of power and exclusion? With all the problems of Homer's Iliad and Odyssey and Hesiod's Theogony and the Genesis stories concerning the sacred and the profane, regarding revelation, interpretation, transmission, meanings, symbolisms, human nature and circumstances, one must ask, is history universal or limited to a particular people, place and nationalists? I'm here exploring whether we can have a history that is universal or one that is national or particular to the times without drawing universal conclusions about all things sacred and profane. If historical things such as Homer's poems and Hesiod's Theogony are more credible in the future than in the past, what guideposts can they provide and what reverence can be put in them? For if the past approaches its present with scant regard, how then can we trust what we now have or what we have now? Yet, there are those who have sought to rescue the truth of history, saying that those before them wrote to flatter or within a turbulent time that necessitated such writing. Yet, whether for flattery or truth, we get to understand the issues and dynamics of the day so that those ahead can continue to build on what is left. We'll be right back after these messages.
I don't know how long you'll feel this pain.
Welcome back to the Neoliberal Round podcast. That is Dion keeping. God is working. And he began by saying that I may not have all. He began by saying that I may not have all the answers. And no one have all the answers, because God is than that which nothing greater can be conceived or imagined. But we, as human beings, we are limited, yet we act and pretend as if we have arrived at all truth, so that we can create doctrines and lord that over others, or rules in society, and appeal to the divine that is vast and beyond any limitations of humanity. I'm talking about secrets to unlocking my divine intervention. As we talk about power, privilege, status, and secrets to unlocking divine intervention, you wonder, why is there secrets to unlocking divine intervention attached with power and privilege? Because when you have arrived at an experience, we have a tendency to privilege that experience and to impose that experience. And that is a problem. Some time ago, someone had a divine experience that was meant for them. Because God relates to each of us based on our circumstance and based on our context and based on our limitations and based on our understanding of all things. Yet when we have found God, or if we find him, or whatever the case is, we universalize that. And it becomes the yardstick. So that when those ahead come after, and they cannot relate to what was before, it creates a clash. It creates a problem. For self and for society. You know, when I started this essay project, which may form the basis of my dissertation, it was never the secrets to unlocking my divine intervention, but just secrets to unlocking divine intervention, which is part 2 of the 2-volume book, Privilege, Power, Position, Status, and Secrets to Unlocking Divine Intervention. But having read and explored the foundational history of the sacred and profane, mixed with my understanding of certain things from Descartes and Kant, Gramsci and Foucault and Marx, I've been given deeper revelation of this divine intervention so that it's more personal and not necessarily a universal rule. And I'm, of course, against privilege and glorifying any particular status or view over another unless it's one that dehumanizes, and that I am against. Yet, one's experience can be a powerful story that may inspire and even change lives in a positive way. I have come to accept that God reveals himself to people in various ways. That is the conclusion from my readings in the foundation of all things, Western or Eastern, up to this point. Descartes said we can only be certain of ourselves, and in time, God has personally showed himself intimately, or personally, to have an intimate relationship that is not designed for the world. So we are to assume then that Homer's experience was personal and not meant to be for all. But men have tried to make it universal and added their perceived intellect so as to privilege their knowledge of all things. And Kant has asserted, rather convincingly, that knowledge is based in or on human nature and circumstance. From Homer and Hesiod, with their theocratic view of things that privilege Greek society or not, and whether they exist to Sappho and Pindar anthropomorphic idea of the sacred immortalizing love and strife over war, to ethnocentrism of Orientalism and its response, Occidentalism, which began with Herodotus in Persian occupied by Greek, who is fixing history. The Jews and the Romans, with their religion of a God of rules, ethics, and miracles, and a hero who saves the day by dying, which continues the love theme. What if Homer was not meant to be anything? Yet we are told that the Greek poet shows his cards so as to allow for imagination. So it's an imaginative piece of epic, which sensationalizes an old, dull, cliche story, or it was made for TV special. So the intervention I speak about here is not one of privilege or rubric based on any system. It is a personal story that is not fictional, but experiential and based on actual events. And the story I'm referring to, if you missed the episode, part A of the series, then I began by sharing a testimony. And you may need to reference that in order to understand what I'm saying here. I said, so the intervention I speak about here, where I prayed and something happened in the particular way I prayed for, is not one of privilege or rubric based on any system. It is a personal story that is not fictional, but experiential and based on actual events. Now, the events may bear conclusions that I'm here purporting that it is the divine that has intervened to save the day. Yet it could have been accidental or coincidental. But in my position of personal truth, but it is my position of personal truth where I cannot deny for myself the facts, which may be either trained or internal. But when you hear these events, the events that I will share with you as it relates to divine intervention, stories from different walks of life, from different backgrounds. Some worship cows, some worship stones, some worship ancestors, and some worship a Jesus or Allah. But they've all experienced the divine. So when you hear these events, you may decide for yourself whether they are myths or truths or glimpses of the divine, and how these testimonies or stories can be connected to a divine that is personal, relatable, or universal, and connected wherever they bear any understanding in how we can look at the divine in relationship to our own lives. We will continue to discuss the issue of power, the issue of privilege, power, position, status, and secrets to unlocking my divine intervention. This is the end of part 2. Join us for another day where we will look at part 3 on this very same topic. Continue to support us at the Neoliberal Corporation as we continue to put out scholarly and very important articles and commentaries through our podcast, whether our website, theneoliberal.com, or ronaldocmckenzie.com, or https://anchor.fm/the-neoliberal. And you can support us by going onto our podcast and scrolling down to the details, or going to the neoliberal/support it. Okay? But thank you so much for listening to this show. Subscribe, share it with your friends, send us a feedback. The Neoliberal Corporation, serving the world today to solve tomorrow's challenges. Have a good day and take care.